All right, so today we're diving into something I think we all could use a little more of, feeling comfortable in social situations.
Yeah, it's like this basic human need, right, to
Yeah,
connect with others.
exactly. And we're going to unpack all that today using this Healthline article called 10 Tips for Being More Social on Your Own Terms. So think of this deep dive as your toolkit,
Mhm.
for navigating those gatherings and parties and stuff, especially if you're someone who's maybe, a little hesitant about putting yourself out there.
It's all about finding your way to connect, not forcing yourself to be someone you're not.
For sure. For sure. So the article starts off by saying this whole being more social thing should be for you, not because, someone else thinks you should be more outgoing.
Mm.
Does that resonate with you? Have you ever felt that pressure to be more social than you really are?
Oh, yeah. I think we've all been there at some point. The thing is, genuine connection can be amazing for us, but only, when it feels authentic. If it's
Yeah.
draining you, it's just going to backfire.
That's a great point. And the article even has these 3 questions it suggests you ask yourself before you commit to anything social. So first, am I looking forward to this? Second, do I feel guilty if I don't go? And finally, will this actually bring me joy?
Hmm. Those are good ones. Really make you think about your motivations there.
Right. Okay, so let's say you are ready to connect more, but the thought of small talk just makes you cringe. The article totally gets that awkwardness, which I appreciate.
Mhm.
Who actually enjoys forced chatter about the weather?
But here's a thing that might surprise you. You're not alone. About 40% of adults and teens actually say they're shy. Did you know that?
Wow, 40%. Really?
Yeah. It's from Professor Bernardo Carducci. He ran the Shyness Research Institute. So, if you feel awkward, you're in good company.
That does make me feel better. It's not just me then.
Nope, not at all. And probably not the person you're talking to either. So how about we ditch the weather talk and try some, more interesting icebreakers?
Yes, please. Were there any from the article that stood out to you?
Well, instead of the typical what do you do, try something like, what shows have you been binge watching lately? It's kind of fun, and you might find some common ground.
That is way more interesting than talking shop. I can see how that would actually lead to a real conversation,
Yeah.
not just a quick answer and then awkward silence. What else did they have?
Oh, there was another good one. Where's the last place you traveled? What did you like about it? Everyone's got a travel story, even if it's just a staycation.
Yeah, and then you could build on that, right?
Mm.
Like, oh, I've always wanted to go there. What should I see? It keeps the conversation going.
Exactly. It's that back and forth, that sense of discovery.
Okay, so small talk is just the beginning, right?
Mhm.
How do we move beyond those initial exchanges and really connect?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. The article talks about active listening, and for good reason. When someone truly listens to us, we feel seen and valued. It builds trust like nothing else.
So it's more than just nodding along, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are some ways to be a more active listener?
One of the best tips is to pay attention to what the other person is excited about. When their eyes light up, that's your cue to lean in.
Makes sense. Their passion becomes contagious,
Mm.
and it tells you something important about them.
Exactly. What are they passionate about? What matters to them? Those are the things that make them them. And the article had these 3 questions that I thought were so insightful, and I think they'd be great for our listeners to keep in mind during any conversation. What's important to this person? What are they excited to share? And what do they value?
Hmm, those are good ones. It helps you shift from what do I say next to what's going on with them.
Right. You take the focus off of yourself and put it on the other person, which actually, makes you a better conversationalist.
Okay, so we're listening, well, we're finding common ground. What's another tool we can add to our, social toolkit?
Believe it or not, the article suggests something as simple as giving compliments.
Really? I always thought compliments were kind of superficial.
Not necessarily. Studies have shown that giving a genuine compliment not only makes the other person feel good, but it also boosts our own happiness. It's a win-win.
Oh, okay, now I'm intrigued. I know I've definitely felt great when someone gave me a genuine compliment. But how do we make them, truly meaningful, not just empty flattery?
That's where the article gets specific. It says to avoid those generic compliments, the ones you could say to anyone, instead focus on personality, on those little quirks that make someone unique. And maybe avoid commenting on appearance. It's more impactful to acknowledge their character or their actions.
So instead of you look great, it's more like, I loved how you handled that situation. You were so calm and collected.
Exactly. You're noticing something specific, and that shows you're really paying attention.
That makes sense. It's
Yeah.
like you're seeing the person, not just their outward appearance.
Precisely. And those kinds of compliments are way more likely to spark a real connection.
So far, we've been talking about one-on-one interactions, but what about connecting with people in groups? Any tips for navigating those situations?
That's where the article talks about finding your tribe. And it doesn't always have to be, deep, intense conversations. Sometimes it's just about shared interests and enjoying activities together.
For things like joining a book club, taking a cooking class.
Or volunteering for a cause you care about. I think for our listeners, the folks who are all about learning, taking a class to learn something new would be a great fit.
Totally. It takes the pressure off constantly coming up with conversation topics. You already have that shared interest as a starting point.
And you're learning something new in the process, so it's a win-win.
Okay, finding your tribe is awesome, but what about those people we already know? The article also talks about being more proactive in reaching out to them.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in our routines and let those connections fade. But picking up the phone and making a plan can do wonders for those relationships.
It's like sending a signal that you value that connection enough to put in the effort.
And the research actually supports this. Strong social connections can actually improve both our physical and mental health. So it's not just about feeling good in the moment, it's actually good for us in the long run.
Wow. So connecting with friends isn't just fun. It's practically a health plan.
I know, right? Pretty amazing. Now, are you ready for a curveball? The article suggests something that might seem a little counterintuitive.
Okay, hit me with it. What's this unexpected tip?
It's about chatting with strangers.
Hold on. Isn't that a bit risky? I mean, we're always told to be cautious around strangers.
I hear you, but the article's not saying to spill your life story to every random person you meet. It's about those little interactions that can brighten your day, like chatting with the barista while you wait for your coffee or saying hello to your neighbor in the hallway.
So those little moments of connection, even with people we don't know well, can actually make us feel more connected to our community as a whole.
Exactly. And what's fascinating? A 2014 study found that having a wide network of these weak ties, those casual acquaintances, can actually boost our well-being.
So it's not all about deep, meaningful friendships. Those small interactions add up too.
They really do. Now, before we move on, there's an important distinction the article makes that I think we should address. It's the difference between shyness and social anxiety.
Right. Shyness is something I think a lot of us experience, but social anxiety is a whole other thing.
Yeah. It can be really tough. While shyness might make you, hesitate to start a conversation, social anxiety can actually be debilitating.
So how can we tell if it's something more serious than just, feeling a little shy? What are some signs to look out for?
The article mentions a few red flags, like consistently avoiding social situations or feeling this intense fear of being judged, or even physical symptoms, like nausea or dizziness, just thinking about being around people.
That sounds really rough.
Oh.
What would you say is the best course of action if you know someone is experiencing that level of anxiety?
Don't wait. Reach out for professional help. A therapist can give you personalized support and teach you coping mechanisms.
It's like any other health concern, right? You wouldn't hesitate to see a doctor if you had, physical symptoms.
Exactly. Mental health is just as important. And remember, there's no shame in seeking help. It's actually a sign of strength.
Okay, so while these tips are great for, everyday social situations, if it's something deeper, professional guidance is really important.
Absolutely. Now, are you ready to kind of switch gears a bit? We've talked about a lot of practical advice, but there's another piece to this whole puzzle: mindset.
You mean like how we think about ourselves in social situations?
Exactly. Think about it. Even with all the best tools and tips, if you're walking into a room thinking, I'm awkward, no one wants to talk to me, that's going to affect how you interact.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So what are some of those negative thoughts that might be holding you back? Things like, I'm not interesting enough, or I'm always the quiet one.
Ooh, those are the classics. But how do we, combat those thoughts? They can feel so ingrained.
It takes practice, but one way is to just notice those thoughts and consciously try to reframe them. So instead of, I'm always awkward, try, I'm still learning, and that's okay.
It's about giving yourself permission to not be perfect, right?
Exactly. And remember, everyone feels awkward sometimes. It's a normal part of being human. Instead of, beating yourself up, try laughing it off. Humor can really diffuse the tension and make things feel less scary.
Okay, so we've talked about shyness versus anxiety and, the importance of a positive mindset. Where do we go from here?
Well, remember how the article stressed that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to, being more social. What works for one person might not work for someone else.
Yeah, and that's okay. It's about finding what feels right for you.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination. Be patient with yourself, celebrate the small victories, and most importantly, have fun.
Such a good reminder. Now, as we were prepping for this deep dive, something interesting came up. The article focuses mainly on in-person interaction, but we live in a world where online communication is huge.
Right. How do these tips translate to building relationships in digital spaces?
Yeah. Are those icebreaker questions still relevant online? Does active listening look different in a virtual chat?
Those are great questions. It makes you wonder if, we're witnessing the evolution of social skills as we adapt to these new ways of connecting.
It's definitely something to think about.
Hmm.
But for now, I think we've covered a ton of ground on this social interaction deep dive.
We have. Hopefully, our listener is walking away with some new tools and perspectives. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Start small, be kind to yourself, and celebrate every step.
And remember that you're not alone in this. We all crave connection, and we all have something unique to offer.
So true. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another, knowledge adventure.
Hmm.
Until then, keep those conversations flowing and those connections growing. And hey, remember to be yourself, your most authentic, engaging self.
Beautifully said. And that wraps up our deep dive for today. Now, if you're feeling inspired and want to take things a step further, we've got something special for you. As we wrap up this deep dive on being more social, I'm really struck by how much we've actually covered. We started with small talk, and now we're talking about the very nature of connection.
Yeah, and how it can actually boost our well-being. It's pretty fascinating, right? It's like we're not just social creatures. We actually thrive on connection.
It's like it's in our DNA or something.
Yeah.
But I think what's really resonated with me is that there's no one right way to be more social.
Totally. It's about finding what works for you and your personality. Remember those self-reflection questions from the article. Those are super helpful.
They're like our compass, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Before we even think about tips and tricks, we got to figure out why we want to connect more. Is it because we genuinely want to, or are we feeling pressure from, outside expectations?
Yeah, once we're clear about that, it's amazing how much easier it becomes to actually put those tips into practice. Because then it feels authentic, right? Like it's truly coming from you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about our listener right now, though. Maybe they've been taking notes this whole time, but they still feel a little nervous about actually trying this stuff.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, it's totally normal to feel nervous. Remember that statistic? 40% of people say they're shy. So you are definitely not alone. And chances are the person you're talking to is probably just as awkward as you are.
So statistically speaking, we're all in this together. But beyond that, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling hesitant to take that first step?
I'd say start small. Be kind to yourself. Pick one tiny action and just focus on that. Maybe it's smiling at a stranger or asking a follow-up question or giving a genuine compliment. Something small.
That's great advice. I love
Yeah.
that. Because even a small step can have a ripple effect, right? We might brighten someone's day. Or we might surprise ourselves with, how good it feels to connect with someone in a new way.
Exactly. And the more we practice those small actions, the easier it becomes.
Yeah.
It's like building any skill. Consistency is key.
So it's not about becoming a social butterfly overnight. It's about taking these small, consistent steps that'll help us build our confidence over time.
Now, it is important to reiterate one more time, though, that if you're finding that shyness is truly holding you back, or if you're experiencing some of those more intense symptoms of social anxiety we talked about, don't hesitate to reach out to a professional. A therapist can give you the guidance and support that you need.
Absolutely.
Right.
Taking care of our mental well-being is so important.
Yes.
It's just as important as taking care of our physical health.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to this thought. It's so simple, but also really profound. Each and every one of us has something unique and valuable to offer the world.
I love that.
And when we allow ourselves to, truly connect authentically with others, we create the space for those gifts to be shared and appreciated.
Yeah, it's like we're all pieces of a puzzle. And when we connect, we create something more beautiful and more complete.
Beautifully said. We all crave that sense of belonging, those moments of shared laughter, those deep conversations that just light us up. It's what makes life richer and more meaningful.
So to all our listeners out there, I encourage you to embrace your own unique way of connecting with the world. Whether it's through heartfelt conversations or shared hobbies or acts of kindness, or even just a simple smile you share with a stranger. Every interaction has the power to make a difference.
And remember, this journey of being more social, it's an ongoing exploration. There's always more to learn, more to discover, and more ways to connect.
So keep those conversations flowing, those connections growing, and those hearts open. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the amazing world of social interaction. We'll see you next time for another adventure in knowledge and exploration.
Until then, be kind to yourselves. Stay curious and embrace, the beautiful messiness of human connection.